Three invitees to the Saints rookie camp this past weekend were signed to the 90-man roster yesterday, but the bigger news could be the possibility of the Saints signing a top free agent a little later on in the summer. I'm Tim. Let's talk Saints. So the first one we're going to talk about is wide receiver Donovan Peoples-Jones. He was a 2026 round pick by the Browns, 6'2", 204 pounds. He's a little bigger than most of the receivers we have on the roster, or at least equal to when you're looking at guys like Mims and Wilson, who this is what we're talking about here with this signing. Um, I don't think he's coming in and competing for the top couple of spots, but making the roster, bringing in a veteran with some experience and some decent production over his career, kind of challenging for those 3, 4, 5, 6 spots, depending on how many receivers we keep on the active 90 or the active 53 man. 2020 to 2023 was with the Browns, traded doing the 23 season from the Browns to the Lions. That's where he finished up last year. His career overall numbers of 122 receptions, 1,895 yards, averaging 15 and a half yards a catch. Pretty decent on the average per catch. 8 touchdowns in his career. He's kind of another version of I think MVS, Marcus Valdez Scantling from last year. Um, so it could be a sneaky good signing, sort of like he was. I think they're very similar mold, and they're kind of when you're talking 15 yards, that's about where MVS's average was last year coming in. That's not bad. Um, on some decent number of snaps over his career. In fact, for one season, 2022 in Cleveland, it's about 800 yards of that came there because he was a starter for a period with the Browns. So this could be a very sneaky signing, a lot like the MVS was during the season last year. Um, in my mind, we were kind of 1 for 3 in that because we brought in Cedric Wilson in the beginning of the year. We grabbed Equinemius St. Brown at some point. I think very similar in what we were looking at from adding those guys, and it took us getting MVS during the season to kind of hit what we were looking for. So maybe they think they kind of see it in Peoples Jones. We'll see, but considering after you get, I mean, our top three, presuming they're healthy and ready to go, he could be fighting for a spot with a relatively group of about 5 or 6 or 7 more receivers. Most of them younger, but you still have Cedric Wilson hanging around there. So we'll see how this one turns out. The other one was kind of a head scratcher. In signing Terrell Burgess. Now he was a 2020 pick, third round pick by the Rams. Brandon Staley's 1 year as defensive coordinator for the Rams. He played 2020 to 2022 with the Rams. They cut him. He finished 22 with the Giants. The Commanders had him in 23. The Bills had him in 24. He's piled up a little bit of an injury history. He played some with the Rams early in his career, and was actually there when they won the Super Bowl in 21. But in his rookie season, he broke his ankle, had season in an IR, I believe it was week 7. In 23, when he was waived by the Giants, was with an injury designation. In 24, he got hurt early, and I think it was still training camp. They placed him on IR. Then a few days later, they waived him with an injury designation. And from that span from 22 to 24, when he was Giants, Commanders, um, Bills, more of a practice squad guy. I don't think he really ever truly had a roster spot anywhere. Kind of a case of a third round pick that had some injury issues also, but there was a time where he was healthy in 21 and 22 and didn't not really putting a whole lot on the board. His career stats are 54 tackles and 1 pass defended. He has 0 turnovers forced. Um, so this may just be a move of someone who played 1 year with Brandon Staley, who they drafted in the 3rd round. So apparently highly thought of, that just never came to fruition. Maybe you're looking for lightning in a bottle here. Um, I don't know. I don't necessarily know if I understand it all the way, but you brought in a guy. I mean, he apparently showed him something, or at least enough. Or Staley saw what he saw when they were drafting him in the process in 2020, and said, let's give him a shot. I, I don't really know, but that one was a bit of a head scratcher because it was basically, we'll talk about this in a little while, who the Saints released to make room for him. But I think this weekend the biggest bit of news is kept head scratching why Asante Samuel Jr. was still floating out there as a free agent cornerback. Even in the height of free agency in March, he was a name that was bandied around as one of the top guys. The other top guys all got signed. He sat there, didn't see any activity. And as we created salary cap space with all the gymnastics we were doing and all the stuff going on, it never came back around to, well, what about Asante Samuel Jr.? Refresh course, he was a second pick in 2021 by the Chargers, Brandon Staley Chargers. First 3 years, the 3 years that Staley was with the Chargers, Samuel was a 3-year starter for him at cornerback. Drafted in the second round, high draft capital. So there's a connection here, obviously. Last year, after week 4, he was put on season-ending IR. They called it a shoulder injury. More on that in a second. But in his career, 176 tackles, 37 pass defended, 6 interceptions. Um, he had one postseason game in 2022. The infamous, he picked Trevor Lawrence 3 times in that game against the Jags, and one of them was a pick six. I think overall, it's exceptional ball skills. I don't think anybody argues that, especially in the defense that he was playing those first 3 years where he under Staley. So again, a connection here, and can see something, the light bulb going off why this may happen. Also, kind of has a reputation. I was reading an ESPN article this morning. Forget who wrote it, but was bringing up the ball skills and some of the stuff he can do. And they also mentioned poor tackling skills. In his career, he's 27 missed tackles, and in the postseason, add 3 more in that 3-pick game against Trevor Lawrence and against the Jags, which is kind of a microcosm because I'm like, our tackling for the Saints has not been very good, consistently good in a long time. And so you add somebody like that, but the trade-off is if you can break up passes and pick balls and do that kind of stuff, like in that game, his 3 missed tackles were nothing compared to the 3 interceptions he had. One of them he scored with. So, and side note, I didn't look it up, but I'm pretty sure that's the game that Jacksonville had the big comeback and ended up winning late in the end. That kind of started the doom process for the Brandon Staley era with the Chargers. But I mean, overall, we need to clean up the tackling. That ESPN article, they were talking a little bit. It was a little blurb, and it wasn't much. But I think he bad angles or something like that. So made it sound like it's something that could be fixable. But I'm going 3 years plus a quarter of a season, basically, since he got so hurt early last year. I don't know. But he is one of the top guys out there. And like we said, a serious connection with Brandon Staley. What turned out that we found out after his visit over the weekend, he underwent neck surgery in April. And it seems like it was something he's had for a while. The shoulder, he had some shoulder stingers last year, which I'm assuming that was the reason why it was listed as he was IR'd with a shoulder injury. So apparently had a surgery in April to fix all this. Next checkup with the doctor is July, so there's nothing going to happen between now and then. And he's visiting teams. He's keeping involved in the process. So July at the earliest, training camp likely somewhere around there. This is kind of a repeat of what we had last year, I think, with Justin Simmons. And luckily we lost out on that one. So reuniting with Brandon Staley sounds like a plus. Getting him to tackle better would be even bigger plus, apparently. And the Saints have some money to spend. So logically, if he's recovered and ready to go and cleared by the doctors, there's a lot here that makes sense for the Saints. And I know it could be a little bit of a gamble coming off the next surgery. So I don't know if you could go prove a deal or not. It probably depends on the interest of other teams and corners. There's something teams are always looking for, so you never know there. But I mean, overall, I'm sitting here looking, going, there's a possibility if you would sign him again, has clear medical, and I think you have to be fairly certain or be able to get him on a prove a deal a little bit like you did Chase Young last year. And you stop and think McKinstry, Samuels, Taylor, as long as we can get him re signed and it doesn't become a Paulson and Debo situation, the rookie Quincy Riley, which is a lot of people have outside of me and the Saints organization were very, very high on him in the pre draft process going into 2026, there is the possibility you have locked down one of your position groups with some high level players in it. And I don't know if you're necessarily going to be able to say that about very many of them, but it could be one free agent, Asante Samuel Jr. signing away from going when we start roughly a year from now. We're all going to be breathing a sigh of relief, going, look, at least one position group is taken care of. My thoughts on it, I'm thinking he clears medicals, you have to go ahead and do it. Lastly, we've had some additional moves, which one of them we alluded to is bringing in Burgess, um, cost you Millard Bradford. Basically, he was the odd man out, I guess, to make room for the signing of Terrell Burgess. Bradford was a guy. Look, I know he was an undrafted free agent last year, and seemed to be in his college career kind of a go get the ball type guy back there. And so you were hoping you could develop him. Um, Apparently, just not in the plans, and this may have something to do with an incoming scheme change. And Burgess, at least being somewhat familiar with Staley, it may come down to something as simple as that. Or this could be, I'm hoping, a case of they saw in Burgess what Staley and them were looking at that when they drafted him in that first year in the Rams. Maybe he's one of those guys that it comes a little slower in his NFL process, but can show up. We've seen it, but I think it's kind of a lightning in a bottle situation. But we'll see how it plays out. Also, Jordan Mims was waived, running back. Again, another sounds like just odd man out situation because that room was very crowded. Yeah, Kamara, Millen, Edwards, Hilaire, and Mims all returning. And then this offseason, you've added Devin Neal. Not sure. I think it's Xarium Holiday in free agency. Undrafted free agent Marcus Yarns and Velus Jones Jr. It's kind of a wide receiver running back type in his NFL career. We signed him, and it was made known that they were looking at him as a running back, and that's where he's listed right now on the Saints team website. So, crowded room. You sign some players. You have to cut somebody, and it seems like again an situation, odd man out situation for Jordan Mims. So I'm kind of disappointed in because I like what he was able to do last year. When we asked him, I always thought maybe at some points we should have let him try to handle a little more of the workload. I don't think he'll ever be an all pro. No offense, Jordan Mims. But I think he's just a solid NFL running back who wanted to be there, is going to play hard, help you in special teams, and do some serious dirty work for you. But, you know, new coaching staff, we know how it is. And look, there's a chance Mims may show back up on the roster. We know the Saints are famous for cut waves all the way through. Hell, even they'll even do it during the season. So this is a guy clears waivers and is sitting out there. Doesn't necessarily mean he's not coming back at some point, but there's a lot in that room to choose from. So one of those things that may sort itself out. The other person, the player they added that had a tryout was quarterback Hunter Dekkers, who here's an interesting case. It's a former Iowa State and Western Iowa quarterback. He basically backed up Brock Purdy at Iowa State. He didn't play much the first couple of years. He's 6'2", 215 pounds. In 2022, after Purdy left, he did throw up a season with a lot of playing time and a lot of starts. 302 on 457 attempts, 66.1 percentage. Threw for a little over 3,000 yards, 19 touchdowns, 14 picks. 2023, he sat out the whole season due to, from what I read, and I didn't go into detail and try to track this down, just what was thrown out there, some type of charges related to sports gambling. Just leave it at that. I'm sure you can go track it down if you want more, because apparently, whatever it was, wasn't serious enough to stop him from not showing up at Western Iowa in 2024, where he had a season of 288 completions on 449 attempts, 64.1% completion, 3,800 yards, 32 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Kind of fitting with this, the Tyler Shuck almost reclamation in college quite a few years. Shucks was injuries. His was whatever the little scandal was in 2023 where he stepped away while he was dealing with that. Coming back, throwing some numbers up. Older guy, so I guess he just got in there, turned some heads. They were like, okay, let's bring it back and see what happens. And typically the Saints, you know, they like having four quarterbacks on the roster because you think about this time a year ago, it was Carr, Hayner, Rattler, and the name escapes me, NFL journeyman quarterback Peterson, I think, was with Chicago for a while and a few other teams. We had him for a stretch before he ended up getting released. So, you know, I don't know what to read into the Dekkers signing, but um, there it is. We do have four quarterbacks now. So just kind of recapping what was going on in the last 24 hours. Rookie mini camp's over. Going to be building up. OTAs is going to start up next week and rolling into mini camp. So this is kind of the weirdly, it's like driving down the road and getting stop signs where there's a lot going on at this point, but there's gaps in it. Almost like, okay, you have some practices, stop, and some more, stop. As the information comes in, I expect more roster movement really to happen during this time. So we'll just keep an eye on it and see what may be bigger news and what's relevant. So if it's your first time here, you like what you saw, please go ahead, give me that thumbs up, feed that algorithm, subscribe, like, share, the whole 9 yards. Make sure you hit your notifications because of the fact we're in this kind of quirky, for lack of a better word, start and stop news cycle that is going to be with the Saints. Maybe a little off schedule. We are this week. Going to try to keep it to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday the best I can. And we'll follow up a little later in the week because the schedule drop is coming. And we'll see what the Saints schedule ultimately ends up looking like, where we're going to go and when we're going to play people on certain days and all that stuff. So till I see you next time, I'm Tim. Peace out and who dat.